each one a pocket Hercules 5 foot and a bit, a kind of Bavril essence of a 6 foot British grit. A Bantam, in British Army usage, was a soldier below the British minimum regulation height of 5 foot 3 inches, which is 160 centimeters if you use the metric system. During the First World War, the British Army raised battalions of which the normal minimum height requirements were reduced from 5 foot 3 to 5 feet. From 5 foot 3 to 5 exactly. This enabled otherwise healthy young men to enlist. Bantam units enlisted usually from industrial or coal mining areas, where short statures were no sign of weakness. The name derives from a former town in Batam in Indonesia, from which a breed of small domestic fowls allegedly originated from. Also, there was something called bantamweight, which was a weight category in boxing that had originated in the 1880s and had produced many notable boxers from that. But we're not talking about boxers, we're talking about short soldiers. So, the first Batam battalion was recruited in Beckenhead, Chester, after Alfred Biglan, MP, heard a group of miners who rejected from every recruiting office had made their way into the town. One of the miners, in fact, that was rejected on account of his size, offered to fight any man there was to prove he was a suitable soldier, and 6 men actually had to escort him out, so he was eventually removed from their office. Batam applications were men news to physical hard work, and Biglan was incented as what he saw the needless rejection of spirited, healthy young men that had petitioned to the War Office for permission to establish an undersized fighting unit. When the permission was granted, news spread across the country, and men previously denied the chance to fight made their way to Beckenhead. 3,000 successful recruits had been accepted for service. 2 new Batam battalions in November 1914. The requirement of their height was between 4'10" and 5 foot 3. Chest size was about an inch more than the army standard. The men became local heroes, and local newspapers, the Beckenhead News, honouring the men of the 1st and 2nd Beckenhead battalions of Chester, which was enamel badges BBB, Biglan's Beckenhead Bantams. Some soon renamed to the 15th and 16th Battalions Chester Regiment. They undertook grueling training and served in some of the most hard-fought battles of the war, such as the Battle of Arras in 1917. Another Batam battalion was the 14th Batam Battalion in West England, the Gloucestershire Regiment, raised in 1915 and sent to France in 1916. Eventually, 2 whole divisions of the 35th and 40th were formed into Bantams. Bantam's men were now virtually annihilated during the Battle of Boulogne, which is part of the Battle of Cambrai in 1917. Heavy casualties transferred to specialized army tunneling companies and tank regiments, and the introduction of conscription in 1917 and the replacement of taller men eventually led to the Batam units becoming indistinguishable from other British divisions. The Batam battalions were, however, not without their problems. First off, it was very easy for children soldiers to get into the Batam's battalion, and as the war progressed, Batam battalions became a lost identity as former miners, and many of the men were assigned to tunneling companies and had become of the smaller size, were transferred to fielding tank regiments. They suffered heavy casualties as well. All soldiers did, but especially at the Battle of Boulogne in 1917, and when they died, they were just replaced by normal or taller men. So in the event, especially in the event of conscription near the end of the war, the Batam battalions appeared largely indistinguishable from other units, because by that time everybody was allowed in the army as long as you were fighting fit. So just a few notable Bantams. Billy Bolton, holiday camp, enlisted in the Canadian Army during World War I. He was transferred to a Batam battalion in France. The poet Isaac Rosenberg, author of the poems From the Trenches, which I will do a special on him, was also a Bantam, and another notable Bantam was Henry Thiggle, Henry Thiggle, who at 4'9" was actually the shortest corporal in the British Army. So right off the bat, this is going to be a pretty short video, mind the pun. Yes, they did have some African troops, Asian troops, colonial troops, but at the same time these same colonial troops had to stay back and protect the colonies, especially in Africa with von Lettow-Vorbeck, and especially in China, where like the Vietnamese that we're going to cover in a minute, were trying to do an uprising, especially with the Kuomintang and the last Emperor Dowager. So it was pretty much like uprising, especially in Ireland as well. Ireland, the Irish uprising as well. So they still needed manpower to actually calm these rebellions and make sure everything was in order. So they were like military police in the colonies. So at the same time, battalions were becoming indistinguishable, because at the same time, death on a massive scale was still happening. So the Bantam battalions were becoming kind of irrelevant, because if they just died, they would be replaced by conscription. So it was a fun little story for these under-height men, and I will say, even though they were short, they still loved their country. And no matter if you're 5'2" or 7'1", I mean, it takes a big heart to die for your country. So at the same time, even though they knew they could have died, they still went out and fight for their country. So I would commend them on that, no matter their size. Billy Bolton actually had a little controversy in the 30s with sex tapes and the camp he ran, but not all soldiers are not without their faults. They might have died for their country, but they still did some shady stuff. So that all soldiers are good, especially like Batan. But Batan is a good example. Hero in World War I, villainized in World War II. So we can only look at this period of time before the 30s. We're looking at 1914 to 1918. If they did have controversy, well, we'll talk about it. It's nothing to shy away from. They did do it. But at the same time, he did serve his Canadian fellow men well. I'm doing this actually on Canada, 150, so happy Canada Day. Gonna link Vimy Ridge. We're gonna do Passchendaele, of course, but it's not that time yet. But happy 150th Canada, and that's pretty much it. Now this video is turning into a long video, and it's supposed to be short to represent the short Bantam battalions. The men of 5'3", but had the grit of 6 feet Brit. Learn something.